All right, folks, we're going to get started. Next slide. The digital marketing purchase stream and success metrics. We opened up this webinar with the hypothesis that display advertising impacts downstream purchase behavior in a similar fashion as point source pollution has on rivers and shorelines. It's a rather dramatic point. Intentionally, because we as marketers would like to pollute the minds of our target audience with our brand products and benefits. Next. To draw a line between the two points, point source pollution, emissions that can be attributed to a single discharge source. And the similarity that we can draw over to the purchase stream advertising is that mind share that can be attributed to a single advertisement. Next. The various stages of the purchase stream include suspects, prospects, leads, opportunities, and existing customers. These suspects are your target audience. Common approaches to reach target audiences online are content and keyword phrase targeting. A more innovative approach would be retargeting, which allows ads to follow users to sites within a particular network. Prospects, those who took an action. Common actions are a click, whether it be a banner, text link, or email. Innovative actions are to measure the brand term searches driven by advertising. Leads, basically those who took an action and have demonstrated a desire. Common approaches would be complete a contact or request form, including email, name, company, etc. A more innovative approach to tracking or driving leads would be to use dynamic or unique 800 numbers in advertisements. Opportunities. An opportunity is defined by one who has desire, need, and sees value. At this point, the marketer's job is not necessarily done, but this is a common handoff when marketing transitions over to sales for nurturing. Often requesting price, delivery timelines, proposals, etc. is a clue to move over to the sales process and to meet with a salesperson. Existing customer retention and cross-sale opportunities. Oftentimes, a common approach would be to offer discounts or incentives. A more innovative approach would be to utilize thank you marketing, whether it be gifts, feedback requests, phone calls, greeting cards, etc. Next. The upstream influence on downstream behavior, we have a number of examples that we'd like to share. One example is how display banner ads increase search click-to conversion by 22% when run together. This study was conducted by Microsoft Atlas Institute in 2007. The industry standard of giving 100% credit to last click doesn't take into account the true value of upstream influencers in multi-channel campaigns. To shed some light on a portion of this dynamic, Microsoft conducted a study involving 11 advertisers tracking both display and search text link placements to determine what impact display advertising has on search placement clicks. The study revealed that by exposing search users to display media from the same advertiser results in a 22% increase in click-to-search conversions over search alone. The key takeaway from this study, display and text link advertising campaigns should run simultaneously with similar or duplicate targeting parameters to yield the strongest performance results. Next. Display ads increase brand term searches by 155%. This study was conducted by Yahoo in 2010. Advertisers tend to separate their digital advertising. They think of search advertising for performance marketing and turn to display for branding. But the reality is that search advertising coupled with display advertising yields better results than when used independently. Specific Media, hired by Yahoo, conducted a study in 2008 based on 60 companies over a 12-month period and found an average lift of 155% in brand term search activity resulting from display advertising exposure. They measured brand term search volumes with and without complementary display placements. Key findings. Banner ads increased brand, company, and product searches. It's important to look beyond click rates when evaluating campaign effectiveness. Takeaways. Digital advertising should not be separated into performance marketing and brand buckets, since they perform better and demonstrate truer metrics in tandem. Email, focus on the click to increase conversions by 85%. This experiment was conducted by Marketing Experiments in 2011. Marketing Experiments conducted an experiment on behalf of a financial institution interested in increasing email newsletter click-through while not hurting white paper downloads. They deployed a series of A/B split tests, with the key differences being: version A featured a white paper description with bullet points summarizing the article value and a call to action of download PDF. The focus was on offer features. Version B featured actual content from the white paper, the first few paragraphs as teaser, and directed readers to view full article as a call to action. The focus was on reading the article. Version B increased click-through rate, which is opens to clicks, by 29%, and conversion rates, clicks to downloads, by 85%. The key findings are that email subject goal is to inspire and open. The email message goal is to inspire a click, and the landing page goal is to convince, to convert, or engage. Takeaways: the objective of an email is to get a click. Define the call to action in your email and build messaging around that specific action. Just keep it simple. Whether CPM or CPC, it all comes down to CPA. The source of this information comes from iMedia Connection in 2006. The article is less study and more observation. The author delves into the strengths and weaknesses of various advertising pricing models for both sides of the advertising equation, the publisher and the advertiser, concluding that it all boils down to CPA eventually. As the most popular rate structure used today, dominated by the search marketing programs, CPC advertising allows companies of all sizes with budgets both large and small to benefit from cost-effective, results-driven online advertising. It also tends to work well across a wide range of marketing objectives, as it can provide great exposure online, driving audience, increasing sales, and growing new registrations. Key findings. CPM risk is placed on the advertiser. The publisher is guaranteed revenue, while the advertiser is not. The CPC option shares risk by both the publisher and the advertiser, with a vested interest in driving click activity to generate revenue on both sides. The CPA is riskier for the publisher, as the advertiser only pays when an action is achieved. Key takeaways. Determine the target cost per action metrics of your campaign prior to launch to accurately assess performance later. Advertisers and publishers need to work together in executing campaign optimization strategies to achieve long-term CPA goals. Next. Expanding email database yields 35x ROI. This was a Pubget case study where we partnered with Keystone Symposia. Keystone Symposia purchased access to our email mining tool that extracts article, PI, or author name, email, and article URL associated with targeted keywords or phrases with the goal of building and broadening their email database. After utilizing the tool and connecting with a number of prospective customers via email, our client, Keystone Symposia, informed us of the cost versus return metrics exceeding 35x. Key findings here. Building your email database via advertising, social media, list rental, or text mining can be very efficient. Consider remarketing and lifetime value of email marketing, and the ROI metrics increase dramatically. Key takeaway, email marketing is very efficient and yields value for both short and long-term objectives. Attract attention, generate interest, and ask for click to increase banner ad conversions by 285%. Another study conducted by Marketing Experiments in the fall of 2011. The folks at Marketing Experts conducted an experiment on behalf of a company interested in driving PDF downloads to a free guide, and they wanted to know which two ads would be best to run. The primary differences in the ads are message and call to action. The version that experienced a higher download rate, 285% increase, generated fewer clicks but more downloads by aligning the ad message with the landing page. Both focused on the benefit of free guide PDF download. Key findings, match banner advertising with landing page messaging. Test ad variations of color, case, layout, and position. And always ask for the click. Include a call to action in all ads. Takeaway, align display ad and landing page messaging with a singular call to action and focus to increase desired outcome beyond click rate alone. Next. Michael?
Thanks, John. So, yeah, to John's last point, there's been a lot of testing around what makes a good display ad. And, we kind of went through some of the best practices on, what you should be doing, maybe even some of the things that you shouldn't necessarily be doing. But when it comes to our industry, focusing really on the lab researcher, it's really important to note how researchers react differently to different display ads. And our job as marketers is really to speak directly to the researchers based on the motivation that's driving them. So here's a set of advertisements. We pulled all of these off of the web during the month of May. And most of them animate, but they all kind of end with a call to action, satisfying what John had just mentioned, which was asking for that click. How they go about doing that is different. On the next slide, here's a list of purchase motivations by market segment that bioinformatics put together. They did a really good job on building out a survey, both on the academic side and on the industry side, to find out really what is driving researchers when they're looking for purchasing a new product that they've never used previously. So you can kind of see that everything, both on academic and industry, it really relates very similar, with the exception of on the academic side, price was much more of a driving factor, and on the industrial side, technology was one that really stood out. Using this information, we can actually build some of these motivations back into our advertisements. And so what we'd like to do is just take a look at the set of ads that we just showed and kind of go through some of those. So on the next slide, we've got two ads here. The first one on the left, top left, is a Life Technologies ad that is basically a special promotion. So even though price ranked very high for academics, special promotions on the last screen was relatively low for both situations, in a case where the researcher had not used the product previously. The lower ad, the BD ad, it's actually pushing a new product announcement. And along with that, their call to action is that they're going to give you a free sample. This was the top factor for both researchers, academically and industrially. And it's one of the most driving factors for coming out with a new product. So our conclusion and takeaway is that both of these ads probably did very well, but they were definitely geared towards different audiences. Whereas the BD ad was going after a broader audience, people who were going to look to use this product for the first time. The Life ad was probably geared more towards their current customers. The one thing to note is that on the Life ad, it was a pretty significant savings, 35%, and it was run during the last week of the last month in the quarter. So certainly special promotion.
Michael, you seem to have gone silent.
Oh, sorry about that. So going to John's last point about, what are we asking the audience to do in exchange for their click? This ad really doesn't leave any doubt. Their offer is clear. It's download a case study. So it was an animated ad, and this is what it followed up with. Most companies will then drive this sort of traffic to a landing page. It'll lead to a lead capture form. And these lead capture forms, they can be good or they can be evil. And the form link definitely needs to be appropriate for the situation. So if you're giving away some really quality content, you can feel a little bit more comfortable in having a longer capture form. But the reality is, whenever you're working with display ads, you want to keep it kind of quick, straight to the point, and get what information you're looking for, and then give the person the offer. Just another side note is that of all the ads that we looked at in the month of March, while we certainly don't recommend this, there was more than a couple of publishers or advertisers who we saw for the first time that were actually linking directly to a PDF. And again, we definitely don't recommend that. On the next slide, these are the last set of ads. So, basically all of these, while they have different call to actions, they're all really the same. It's just asking the audience to click the ads. So we've got learn more, click here, find out, and watch now. The vast majority of ads that you'll see on life science publications really end up in this way. It talks about what the company is trying to push or promote, and then it's really getting them to the website to figure out what to do next. So whereas with an email marketing campaign, what you're trying to do is give away just enough information to get people to your website, with display ads, we really challenge people to say, it's not necessarily that you go after more clicks, but that you're really going after more relevant clicks. So some of the previous examples where maybe the call to action was much more defined in terms of what you're giving out, you're probably going to end up with less clicks than you would if you were just asking anybody to click, but you'll see that the quality is a little bit better. And really the best way to find out if that's true or not for your business is to split test. Run the exact same ad in the same position on the same publisher and just have two versions with different call to actions and different landing pages, and you'll find out very quickly. On the next slide, so we've kind of gotten through, some of the stuff that motivates a researcher when they're looking at advertisements, but it's also important to know that, while I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, that even within academic and industry, there's different types of segments that you have to worry about. So this is really where your company's engagement strategy comes in. If you're using display ads to do retargeting, you have to make sure that, who you're identifying as your viewer in the decision process, and making sure that the content matches them. If you miss here, it really hurts your campaign because you're basically, showing a message to somebody who, isn't interested, and you're really not going to get a great result. So, looking at, on the clinical and pharma side, you've got decision makers, influencers, end users. We really focused on the end users in the first couple items, but when you get into retargeting, you have a lot more ability to kind of hone in on a specific type of audience. On the next slide, we're just going to kind of get into, specifically what defines success and how do you go about measuring it. And so anybody who has had the chance to work with me would know that one of the things I harp on quite a bit is making sure that before you start any campaign, you know what the goal is. You really have to push the focus there and kind of work backwards to see what it's going to take to get to your goal. So we certainly recommend tracking everything that you can along the way. and then even more so, building out a dashboard that will allow you to quickly see, where your campaign stands at any given time. The next point, there's different types of conversions. A lot of companies will typically track, the end result. If we have 100% of our audience coming in and 1% actually buys from us, then we have a 1% conversion. That's a really hard thing to measure in terms of, what led up to that. And so what we recommend is, really breaking it down into micro conversions and macro conversions. And anybody familiar with, Avinash Kanush would certainly know that he's got a couple great blog posts in terms of going in depth on the advantages of doing it this way. But you really have to think of, macro being this is the sale, this is money in the door, and the micro conversions are more, people researching, clicking on display ads, downloading products, or even coming to a webinar. Different researchers, they all have different personas. So again, it relates directly to your business and what you're looking to do. But tracking the micro conversions that lead up to a macro conversion is going to make you a much better marketer, because then you can see where you're being successful along the way, and you're not just looking at 1% is good and 99% is bad. You can really quantify and break down what that 99% is. On the next slide, we've got an interesting quote. So the IAB, the Interactive Advertising Bureau, has a new chairman, and one of the first things that he came out and said was that our products are complicated and our processes are complex. The higher the complexity, the lower the confidence marketers have in investing in digital media. So, we see this as a great quote. Hopefully it means there's going to be a lot of emphasis in terms of, really investing in measuring on the display side. But, when it comes to budget time, it seems as though display ads are usually always one of those things that are on the chopping block. And, it really shouldn't have to be. If you're tracking properly and you can really attest to which display ads are working for you and which ones aren't, then you have a much better idea going into the next planning season on where am I going to be purchasing and how much. So on the next slide, we talk a little bit more about the attribution models, specifically the fact that you have to track everything. So you've got to track all of your campaigns. And if you are, at a big company and tracking is difficult, we absolutely recommend starting small. Run a pilot campaign. Make sure that, what you have is in place and it's working. If you're not tracking, you're really never going to know the answers to which of my display ads are working and which ones aren't. So on the next point, we have single touch and multi-touch. This is really important because a lot of companies will traditionally just, challenge the single point side. It's true that if, on the single touch, or usually what we call last touch, it really just gives us one channel that's responsible for bringing in a conversion. And so while this is something that probably a lot of you have heard and, have seen before, understanding that you need to touch or track all of the multi-touch portions, it's not as easy as it always is. But with multi-touch, we want to make sure that we're giving assists to all of the other tactics which lead up to our end goal. And some of these can be micro conversions, and otherwise sometimes they're not.
Michael, do you mind if I interject with to illustrate your point of single touch versus multi-touch? On what I referenced earlier in this webinar, the display ad driving brand term searches up. So when a target basically sees the display ad, they may choose not to click on it. They may jump over to a search engine, conduct a search for that product or that company name, and according to single touch, last click, or cookie metrics, the credit for that activity will go to the search engine. With multi-touch, there will be credit issued to the banner campaign. I just wanted to illustrate the point of single touch versus multi-touch attribution.
Definitely, thanks for that. So on the last point here, it's really practically how are we going to measure this? And a lot of companies are using Google Analytics, and for a long time, Google Analytics did not allow for multi-touch tracking unless you hacked it in, and it was very complicated and confusing. But recently, they've been hard at work. Multi-channel funnels is now certainly something that's part of what they're doing and promoting. and you can track users for up to a month or more and basically see everything that they did up until the point where you're satisfied and they've reached one of your goals. If your company is using any other type of tracking, then you're probably paying for it, not with your data, but with actual dollars. And so there's a good chance that those dollars have been used to invest into multi-touch tracking as well. So, definitely take a look, and, circling back to the top here is really, set up a pilot campaign if you're not already doing it. See what the data looks like after a month or two, and you'll probably be pleasantly surprised. So then, John, back to you, I guess, for this last slide.
Certainly. Just to summarize the points that we've made throughout the webinar thus far, number one is don't be fooled by click alone. There's a lot more going on before that click in most online campaigns. Focus on the call to action. I know Michael illustrated a number of points along this point, and we shared some conversion metrics to justify this. So be sure to focus your ads with a call to action. And lastly, include upstream influencers in performance metrics, whether it be Google Analytics or a paid tracking program. It's vital that you know how exactly your campaigns are performing. We'd like to open up the webinar to any questions you may or may not have.
Hello, this is Whitney again. I'm going to be moderating the Q&A session. So I know some of you have started asking questions already. You may continue to ask so by typing in the questions box. Those questions, as a reminder, will go only to me. So if it's something that you wish to remain private and, one for John or Michael to follow up with you personally offline, don't worry, all those details will remain private. And I'm going to get going with some that we have already been asked. And the first I can answer. So number one is, will the presentation be available after this session? And the answer is yes. We will be emailing out both the presentation itself as well as and we will also post a recorded version of the webinar. So if you have colleagues who missed it or just want to keep it on file, that will be made available as well. And now we're going to get into some questions that I can hand off to John or Michael. And guys, since most of these were not directed towards either of you, I think what would make sense is just for you to jump in and answer a question if you feel it falls within your area of expertise. And just to make it easy for everyone who is listening, please start by saying, hi, this is John, or hi, this is Michael. So first is, and this goes to what I believe was something that Michael was pointing out on the banner ad campaign, was that, numbers such as, save X% or, get something free tend to thrive pretty well. And I was wondering if you have heard anything on research as opposed to what numbers themselves psychologically have the best conversion rates. And obviously 100% free is great, but when we're not doing 100% free, does 29% work better than 33%? So please jump in on something like that.
Michael, I guess I could take I could take a portion of that question from the consumer mindset, being that that's where my most recent experience prior to coming to Pubget. We found in the consumer travel industry that the number, the engagement or click-through numbers increased significantly with discounts that exceeded 15%. Anything less than that, and we did not see much of a jump in engagement. Perhaps Michael can speak to more of the life sciences.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say thank you for that, because that is not information that I have. However, I do know that, looking across the board from just seeing these ads month to month, the one that we pointed out earlier in the presentation that Life did, it was, a pretty significant discount. You usually don't see discounts offered that high, so I'm sure that it probably made a pretty good impact. But that's a great question, and I will I will look into that and maybe answer that offline as well.
The next question I have is regards to social media. So we're seeing more marketers in life science try to make sense of social media. And Michael and John, I'm wondering if you've seen any of your clients have any value in using ads to increase engagement in the social media sense, whether it's driving people to be more engaged when they see them at conferences or to increase buying at targeted institutions or whatnot. So please answer if you feel like it's something that you've worked with.
Michael, is this something you want to take the lead on?
Yeah, sure. So this is Michael. I think that's a really good question. The lines between traditional display advertising and then social media, and how social media is in some ways very heavy on display advertising, they're really being blended. So some of the advantages of working with a publisher in the past or working with a social media network, you can now get on either one. So in the case of publishers within our industry, it's really nice to be able to run display ads and focus on a specific group, based on whatever the publication is related around. To that same effect, we found a lot of success on LinkedIn when we're advertising, because to that very same point, you can search and advertise based off of job titles and positions, or you can even look at groups of interest and target ads directly there. So I think social media is going to always play an important role just in general, because my advice to clients is always, when you're looking at advertising on a social media network, make sure that you're really leveraging the network itself. If you're not, then you're really doing nothing more than using it as another place to advertise. But more and more we're seeing companies involved in it, and then even banner ads that are being run on traditional publishers, as opposed to necessarily being sent to a company landing page or microsite. Some of those are now being sent to their social media site so that they can kind of drive up the number of followers or fans.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. From again, my perspective from the consumer space is the social marketing is a well-suited channel for loyalty, the existing customer retention. Once you have that person following you on Facebook, liking you on Facebook or following you on Twitter, it's a great channel to essentially build loyalty and keep that relationship going. I'm not well versed in the developing or establishing new relationships via social media. So in my opinion, and from the consumer business to consumer marketing perspective, it is a good tool for building existing relationships and reinforcing them.
Great, thank you, John. Next question is, so Michael, you mentioned that folks will use case studies sometimes. What about using research content, something that might be published as a call to action? So a more creative way of using some of the digital reprints. So Michael, John, can either of you talk about the use of connecting your brand to some of the academic research that maybe it powers?
I guess I'll take that one. From the Pubg perspective, we are a life science article search engine, and much of the value that we bring is in the audience that we have. There's a large number of researchers that are looking for studies to support their research efforts and to perhaps lead them into new directions. And this content is being looked at, according to Pubg numbers, by about 600 to 800,000 researchers every month. According to the NIH Medline, there are about 10,000 articles being written and published every day. So there's a lot of information out there, and as far as display advertising and CPC advertising, we hang our hat on those papers and those folks interested in these papers. Michael, do you have any insights to share on that front?
Yeah. To just add, I mean, one of the big things that we always advise clients on, especially in the digital side and really with all B2B marketing, is your content is what's driving all of this. So it's always relating back to content and your content marketing strategy. And if you want to work on specific tactics, whether it's email or search engine optimization, if you have good quality content, you'll always be in a good spot. So I would say start with your content, build a map of what assets you do have, and then build the marketing around it.
Okay, just to let everyone know, I have 2 questions left, and then we will be wrapping this up. So the second to last question is going back to metrics. So I think the really common metric is percent of people clicking or number of people clicking, maybe conversion rate after they click. Could the two of you go a little more into depth about metrics outside, the percents that click that you find to be particularly effective in telling about engagement? And you also mentioned something about cookies. So can we talk a little bit more about what cookies can do in terms of helping you get a little more data on the audience and adding to those multi-touch campaigns?
I guess I can start this one, Michael, because the tracking essentially begins on the ad or the publisher site, and then the metrics and the reporting after that ad is clicked typically go over to the advertiser or to the agency tracking mechanism. So as far as cookies go, I think we all know that the cookie is dropped when an ad loads on the page as far as an impression. The cookie can also be dropped upon click, and that's mostly for the text link placements. As far as the metrics that we can provide as a publisher, you're really looking at the impression and the click. With emails, you can look at the total number sent, you can look at open rate, and you can look at clicks as well. So as far as metrics go from the publisher point of view, we don't have our hands in a lot of data as far as engagement and time spent viewing a video or time spent on a landing page, etc. And I think that Michael, with his agency experience and access to tracking, can perhaps share quite a bit more information along those lines.
Right. So, after somebody clicks an ad, we try to get as much information that we can about that person. First and foremost, we want to see, is this somebody that we've seen before? So if we have marketing automation in place, or if we have dropped a cookie on them previously, that's information that we would then know, and then we can certainly use as part of that experience going forward. Even in cases, though, where we don't know anything about them prior, we can certainly leverage a couple services. One of them is Bizzo, and another is Demandbase. Both are very different solutions. One is cookie-based, one isn't, but basically both give you the ability to, in real time, see some non-personable information of the people as you're building the page. So what we've been playing around with and really like doing is, as a page is being loaded, we try to get the information that we know about them already, and then the information that we're being fed from another service, and then we build a custom message directed, specifically to them. The end result ends up being, a much higher conversion rate because we're speaking directly to the audience that we're trying to reach, and we can actually get away with asking a lot less on a form because a lot of those supplemental values will actually be filled in. So as this relates to kind of multi-touch and everything else, if you have a couple of different hit points where you're collecting information on someone and you're constantly building out their profile, eventually once they come back and they give you their full information, that's when you can really determine, are they a prospect or are they already a lead? Where are they within the sales funnel, and what should we do with them next? And it's something that companies spend a lot of time looking at in terms of how far in depth they want to go as far as tracking. But again, the advice relates back to, start small and build it up as you need more information.
All right, great. And I just got another question in for Michael, so we still have two more. And Michael, you discussed focusing on micro and macro conversions in advertising. And the question was, in the life sciences, how often are we actually seeing macro conversions? And the suggestion was that this might be more for reagents compared to larger lab equipment. And do you see that as correct?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you're selling capital equipment and it's, over $100,000, you're not getting a lot of the sales directly on your website. But it's still something where if your business is selling equipment at that price level, you really ought to have a CRM in place that is allowing you to track, not just one individual, but all the company or all the employees of that company, all the way up into that purchase. So, going back to the slide that shows, you've got your suspects. These are people who, they just really want to know what you know. You have your prospects who are anybody who you know something about, but you really need to build out a much more significant profile in order to find out information about them. You have qualified leads, which are folks who, not only do you have a lot of information about them, but they've really, told you that they look like your ideal customer and they might be interested. And then you've got your opportunities, and that's usually when the marketing team is, kind of done with our job, and we're handing it off to the sales folks. We give them all the information that we have about not just the individual, but the company themselves that might be making this purchase, and we kind of step back. So every company has a little bit of a different practice, but if you are going to continue marketing to those people, you got to make sure you're not, jumping over what the sales guy is saying. But at the end of the day, you really want to make sure that, even for the larger ticket items, you're still tracking as much as you can and building out those profiles, and absolutely have to be looking at micro conversions as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that, by closing the loop on the micro and macro data that Michael spoke to, as a publisher in our optimization strategies and efforts, it's really important that we optimize campaigns, change the dynamics of the campaigns based on what we've learned through that 4-week or 8-week or 12-week test. Take what we learned, revise the campaign in any manner that we feel will improve performance, and essentially begin that data collection process over. It's a cyclical process, and it's basically learn, apply, learn some more, reapply, learn some more, etc. And that's how you build long-term relationships as a publisher and as an advertiser.
All right, and last question. Let's try to make it quick so that we are considerate of the rest of everyone's meeting here. And that question is, there are a lot of reference sources. Are there any recommended readings?
I guess we will be sharing the PDFs or URLs for all the data points cited in this webinar. They will be included in the follow-up piece, and I would invite any webinar attendees to reach out to either Michael or myself if you'd like to dig in a little deeper into any of the points made, or if you would, if you feel there's anything else that we might be able to shed light on for you. I know that Michael and myself are very passionate about the digital media space. We love what we do. We love what we've learned, and we are very thirsty to learn more about the industry and our particular pains that marketers are enduring, and how we may or may not be able to help them.
Yeah, and the only piece I would add as far as recommended reading, check out Marketing Experiments. It was one of the topics that John has cited, especially the attract attention, generate interest, and ask for the click. They show how, they kind of put the science behind display advertising, and it's a little older now, but it's certainly something that, I think everybody who sees it for the first time gets really excited, and you don't even have to read it. They have a pretty good video online, so you can actually just sit there and watch, so it works out really well.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. We certainly enjoyed ourselves. We hope you did, and please reach out to either Michael or myself with any questions or wants.